As President Trump put it, and rightfully so, he gave our allies a test to support America when we asked for their help, and too many failed it. The United States has defended Europe for generations.
Hegseth said Trump gave NATO allies one test. America asked for help. They said no. Then he called it shameful.
My first NATO defense ministerial last February, and as the Trump administration has said again and again in the last year and a half, our allies must step up. President Trump has been very clear on this point for many years and over 2 administrations. And for too long, NATO has been a paper tiger and a one-way street.
In fact,
no more. And that's what the Hague Summit is all about. That's what defense spending commitments are all about, transforming NATO back into a real military alliance that's focused on hard power and real deterrence, a NATO 3.0, modeled on the NATO 1.0 that won the Cold War, with our allies actually taking the lead in Europe's conventional defense. And that's what NATO was always supposed to be and what its framers like President Eisenhower always expected. Europe was not supposed to be a dependency of the United States. That's not what Winston Churchill or Charles de Gaulle or Konrad Adenauer wanted or expected. No, Europe was supposed to be a military power allied with a strong America. This is the essence of NATO 1.0. As Dwight Eisenhower himself said as early as 1951, if in 10 years all American troops stationed in Europe for national defense purposes have not been returned to the United States, then this whole process will have failed. Eisenhower was Supreme Allied Commander then, not yet our nation's 34th president. But he and his Allied counterparts, all of them still living in the shadow of World War II, understood that NATO's power did not come from committees or from meetings or from small flags on fancy tables. It came from warriors. And for Europe's defense, it had come from NATO allies. That was NATO 1.0, a hard-edged warfighting organization focused on Europe's defense. But that spirit faded quickly after the Cold War ended. No longer focused on defending Europe, NATO 2.0 drifted toward out-of-area operations and things that had nothing to do with warfighting at all. Instead of tanks and fighters and air defenses, the focus has been on gender equity and climate change and defense austerity. Europe's borders flew wide open. Welfare states expanded. Defense budgets cratered, along with Europe's belief in itself.
Like, while we were still there funding everything for the most part, along with being the world's police here. I do want to go ahead and pause for a second here and actually give credit to specifically Poland here, because they're definitely kind of doing their things as a NATO ally.
And its civilization. NATO lost its way. NATO 2.0 was an era of distraction, deindustrialization, and demilitarization. It was an era of free riding. And those were lost years
and heavy tariffs on us.
And that's why at the Department of War, we've been so clear and so candid to restore NATO's core military role and character. And that's why we've returned U.S. troop levels in Europe to pre-2022 levels, with the redeployment of a brigade combat team last year and further reduction of 5,000 forces earlier this year. At the same time, it's why we've engaged with our allies so consistently. And it's why we've grown our own defense industrial base and encouraged to turn NATO 3.0 into reality, to return the alliance to its roots as a military alliance and ensure that it has the European strength required to sustainably deter aggression and, if need be, make good on Article 5. Some of our allies have gotten the message and stepped up. You know who you are, and we very much appreciate it.
Clap it up.
Last year, under President Trump's leadership, NATO set the new global standard for allied defense spending. 5% of GDP, all in on defense. It's historic, and it's transformational. And some allies are already well on their way to meeting this ambitious target, and in some cases ahead of schedule.
Way ahead, yeah.
And as you've seen over the last 6 months, President Trump is also committed to the United States defense spending, more than $1 trillion in 2026 and a commitment of $1.5 trillion in 2027. We will lead and exceed our own NATO spending standards. And I'm personally on Capitol Hill in order to make sure we do it. It's not do as I say, it's do as we do. Some allies are also getting serious about how they're spending on their defense. In May, the Department of War told allies that we're reducing our contributions to the NATO force model. We also explained how allies can and should backfill those changes. General Grinkowitz reports that some allies have stepped up accordingly, and it's a good start. At the same time, just last month, a small group of strong allies gathered at Bergen for a conversation about focused allied defense spending on the capabilities required to defend Europe even in the event of simultaneous conflicts worldwide. Again, more serious progress. On Ukraine as well, progress. Through President Trump's Pearl Initiative, allies have taken the lead in funding support for Ukraine's defense. The Ukrainians are holding their lines even in the face of sustained Russian assaults. We said it could be done, that our allies could lead, and that it would be consistent with Ukraine's defense. It is happening, and it's a validation of President Trump's approach, an approach that will set the table for peace. Yet for all these early steps in the right direction, there have also been real setbacks that we cannot ignore. For all of our clarity, too many allied capitals seem to still miss something in translation.
Spain.
Too many allies still don't recognize the historic need that President Trump has made clear to them and to NATO itself to reforge a relevant, powerful military alliance. As President Trump put it, and rightfully so, he gave our allies a test to support America when we asked for their help, and too many failed it. The United States has defended Europe for generations. And the president said, all he said was that our jets would need to take off from bases in Europe or our ships from ports to strike targets in the Middle East. Iranian targets that threaten European interests even more directly than they threaten us. But too many of our allies said no, or tried to drown us in arcane legal debates, or criticized us publicly for doing what they aren't prepared or able to do themselves. It was shameful.
Incredibly.
These allies, they put America's sons and daughters, our sons and daughters, at risk by denying them the predictable access, basing, and overflight that never should have been in question at all. In some cases, we had to shift capabilities from one country to another out of NATO allied countries altogether. There's no excuse for that. And that's not to mention the fact that some countries have yet to show a credible path to meeting their Hague commitments. Too much talk. Some of NATO's largest economies, some of our richest countries, allies that are happiest to go on about the rules-based international order and middle powers banding together, still seem to think the era of free riding is here.
Absolutely.
Eisenhower and Trump disagree.
It's time to go, guys.
This isn't what the president or America expects from this alliance. This is not what any reasonable person would expect. And it's not going to cut it anymore. And so we're doubling down on our effort to make NATO what it always was supposed to be, a balanced alliance with Europe in the lead for its own defense, NATO 3.0.
When it comes down to like what NATO has been doing, specifically, like over the last 50, 60, 70 years here, leaning on us pretty heavily while the majority of their citizens absolutely have disdain for us here. I mean, I'm talking about outside of the UK, but there's some people in the UK who definitely do not like us as like Americans here, guys who've been here, but they don't like us because of what they see on TV, California media, who knows? There's a gigantic amount of reasons why there are people who just don't like us. And these are people who we are absolutely losing our American lives for, right? To basically protect, right? While they're basically saying, when you need to actually utilize our air bases or our shipping ports, you have no access to them, but please still protect us just in case something big bad happens here. Even though our civilizations basically have utter disdain for you as American citizens. Guys, I've traveled enough around the world to understand this here. Inside of America, we think everyone loves us. People don't love us, guys. Okay. They think we're arrogant. They think we're cocky. They think we're all of these things here, right? And they just generally have disdain. Not everyone, but there's a good amount of people who just really don't like us. And a lot of these people are in these countries. And I've been to most of these countries in Europe. Okay. The point number one, guys, there comes a time where we're going to have to just cut our losses here. I'm not specifically happy about the idea of this. I do live half of every single year in the south of Spain. This is kind of why I point out Spain kind of all the time, because it's like, I see, guys, I see it. There just needs to be rules and stipulations. I mean, I get it. The European Union, they all have access to NATO, so they're part of NATO, right? And they're to be protected by NATO. And we can't pick specific countries that are inside of the European Union that we don't want to mess with because they're not messing with us, right? We can't do that because, again, the European Union. Guys, it's like them saying, I hate Alabama. I don't want to deal with Alabama, but I'll deal with all 49 of the other states. That's not how that works, my guys. Okay. And that's kind of the dilemma, even when Trump was basically speaking about, kind of picking Spain out of the mix here, because their union is really super similar to our union, right? I mean, this state by state, nation state by nation state. Okay. So guys, tell me what you think we should do here. I do not personally think we could take the whole world on. We do definitely need an alliance here, and we definitely cannot pick and choose the places kind of in Europe that we want to deal with here, right? So all of these nation states specifically that are in the European Union, in fact, need to kind of come up and meet the bare minimum of 5% GDP. Please spend 5% GDP on the defense. That's going to basically help all of Europe. Please do that. Either way, we'll follow the story, no doubt here. If there's any more information, we'll jump into it. But in the meantime, you guys all have an absolutely amazing day. Enjoy your day thoroughly. If you guys are new here, please like and subscribe, please. All right. I'll catch you guys later.